Never really had a sense of my own mortality before the fall. But after surviving several attempts on my life, I was becoming keenly aware every day could be my last. Found myself doing things I never did before, but always wanted to. Elvis had always been one of Janelle's favorites. Figured I'd bring her home a keepsake. Guess I shouldn't have been surprised I wasn't the only visitor.
Half pint.
But I was shocked to see Eli there. So much had happened since I left him in Philadelphia. Told him I'd taken his advice, tried to help others like he'd helped me.
I'm proud of you. Pass the horseradish.
I also told Eli his advice made me some deadly enemies.
Hey, you're still kicking. Must be doing something right.
That was one way to look at it. But I'd been forced to change my route so many times, I was just getting further and further from Seattle.
That's your problem, Half Pint. You gotta trust the road. Always takes you where you need to go. And I need to go to bed.
Next day, I went to bid farewell to Eli. But he'd already moved on. At the time, I didn't know what to make of his message about trusting the road. But since then, it's occurred to me. Maybe I was meant to take the route I did. Maybe everything happened, good and bad, for a reason. There was a doctor in Arkansas who certainly put that theory to the test. This doctor, a hematologist named Aaron Canton, believed some kind of flesh-eating virus was responsible for all the people disappearing. My first thought? Impossible. How could a virus act so quickly? But by that point in my trek, I'd learned not to dismiss anything. Not without some investigation. What I found was, this Dr. Canton and his nurse, Karen Thomas, had set up shop in a local hospital. For several months, they'd been taking blood samples, looking for a cure. They claimed the virus was still out there, which meant everyone who survived had already been exposed. But for some reason, it wasn't instantly consuming people anymore, not like it did the night of the fall. This virus was now slowly eating away at its victims. Fear is the great motivator. The idea that the fall could still be happening was enough to convince most people to stop and give blood. According to Nurse Thomas, Dr. Canton was hoping to find someone with a natural immunity to the virus.
Soon as a doctor isolates a correct antigen, he'll make a vaccine. Could be any day now.
Nurse Thomas was Dr. Canton's greatest advocate. Said she was lucky enough to have met him before the fall. Apparently, he was a world-renowned expert on blood-borne diseases.
If anyone can beat this virus, it's Dr. Canton. He's been working day and night. The man is tireless.
It was comforting to know such caring people were trying to save humanity. And not only that, they offered every volunteer food and shelter for the night. Wasn't a big fan of hospital beds myself, but I'd learned never to turn down a meal. Besides the handful of us who'd stopped in to give blood, there were about a dozen patients who'd already begun to manifest the virus. They were receiving treatment, but there was a catch. The patients had to remain isolated under controlled conditions in order to properly monitor their responses.
Is there any progress? Is he better?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Murphy. I wish I had good news for you.
Please, just give him this.
Made it hard if you had friends or family waiting on the outside, not knowing if you'd come out alive.
Mr. Shoemaker, I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your blood test indicates you're starting to manifest the virus.
I couldn't believe it. I didn't feel any different. But the nurse said I'd probably notice symptoms within the next 48 hours. She invited me to stay with the other patients until they either found a cure or I succumbed to the virus. I told her I couldn't stay. I just wanted to get home while I still had the strength.
If your family survived, Mr. Shoemaker, they're susceptible like anyone else. When we find a vaccine, you can take it back to your family. If you change your mind, Mr. Shoemaker, just let me know. Sooner we get you on a treatment, the better.
Fear is a motivator, but it's also contagious, like a virus. I could see it in the eyes of everyone at that hospital. I felt paralyzed, incapable of moving or even making a decision. Part of me said stay, other parts said run. But what choice did I really have? If I died on my way to Seattle, the last 8 months were a total waste. At least, staying meant a possible cure for me, my family, and the rest of humanity. Hardest thing to do sometimes is trust the road. I wouldn't say I was a prisoner, because it was a jail of my own making. I'd volunteered to be part of a control group. I could leave any time I wanted, but what was the point? Without a cure to the virus, I was as good as dead. The other patients were much further along than me. The first symptom was itching. Then small lesions would appear. After that, things really got ugly. There was nothing to do but use the treatment Dr. Canton prescribed. That, and give a blood sample every 3 hours.
I know it's a pain, but Dr. Canton's tracking the progression of the virus. The more data he has, the faster we can beat this thing.
Sounds like it may only be a few more days until they have a cure.
That's what they told me 4 weeks ago.
Ted Murphy was a former college football star, a man who wasn't scared of a fight. So when he learned the virus had manifested, he was determined to beat it. But the wait was starting to take its toll on him. After the fall, Ted refused to change his dreams.
Decided to find a girl, get married, and raise a couple of linebackers. Just like I always wanted. As soon as I met Ellen, I just